Today, we're going to be talking about sticking points. Have you ever noticed yourself jumping from thing to thing to thing? This can happen with anyone at any age, but I think that it is very common among people in their teens, 20s, where maybe they try something, it doesn't go according to plan, or it seems hard, so then they try something else. This sport isn't for me. This person isn't for me. This career isn't for me because it is hard, or it is boring, or it's not going the way I envisioned it. So let me drop it and try something else. Now, there's some truth to that. Sometimes something really isn't for you. And I think that's one of the amazing things about being a young person. Now, people can do this at any age, but people find it easier to do when they're younger, is to stop and pivot. Pivot? If something is not for you, then quitting is a great thing to do. But if you catch yourself doing this over and over again to the point that you don't really stick anything out, that's when we need to talk about it. How do we get through those sticking points? Have you ever been trying to learn a new skill, whether it's filmmaking, tennis, you name it, and it's going well, you're having fun just kind of playing around, and then you decide you want to actually get pretty good at this. So maybe you get a book, or you hire a teacher, or you just make more of an effort. You start doing it more often. And then at a certain point, it just gets extremely hard and you feel like you're not getting any better. You might even almost feel like you're getting worse, and you stop enjoying it because it used to be fun and now you're actually trying and it's lost its magic. That is something that is largely talked about in the book Mastery, not the more recent one by Robert Greene, but the past one by George Leonard. He talks about, oh man, I should have the book on me, but I will throw up a graph here. And essentially the way he describes mastery is you go up a little bit and then you hit a plateau. And then let's go with the tennis example. He uses that in the book. You're just hitting balls. You're working on your forehand. You're working on not moving your feet, just hitting back something the coach is hitting to you right in front of you. You do that, you do that. And then as soon as you have to do something like move your feet, everything kind of falls apart. And so you feel like you're getting worse because you're doing something that's a little bit more difficult that you haven't mastered yet, that is going to take a long time to get really good at if you want to get the fundamentals and do it right. I think tennis is actually a good example of this because I don't know about you, but at least for me, I can often get it over the net and have a good result with certain sports that I haven't formally studied, but I'm not using proper technique. And then someone will try and tell me the proper technique, and then it'll actually go worse. I won't be able to hit it over the net to the same result. So doing the kind of hack way that I found actually works better. Now, this brings up the question if you want to do something just for fun, or if you actually want to get good at it and learn it as a skill and, quote, master it. If you want to just do something just for fun, let's go back to the idea of filmmaking. You want to make home movies with your friends or just have fun. That is extremely different than, and I'd say even there's another diversion. It's not just fun or to master it. There's also wanting to do something as a career and wanting to continually improve upon it as a skill set in and of itself, but you don't necessarily want to make money from it. We're not going to be talking about that distinction today. That's a separate conversation. But if you want to keep improving at something, we need to learn how to tolerate these sticking points because they will inevitably happen. They are part of the process. I think it comes down to a couple things. Once you've decided that you do want to master something, whether it's for work or not, you just want to continue to improve at it. Let's say filmmaking, tennis, any of these things, or just you want to stick out a certain career and you've hit a big plateau. You want to keep weightlifting and you've hit a big plateau in what you can lift weights in, whatever it is. Knowing that these plateaus happen and that they're normal can help us reduce the mental chatter, the extra baggage, anxiousness, all these extra thoughts that we add and layer on to a problem. Well, it's really not a problem. We're making it a problem. So if we know that it's normal, like, hey, I just increased the amount I can lift each week using a progressive overload program, and now I can't go up this week. In fact, I think this is really another interesting graph. Generally, strength gains shoot up and then they still go up, but they go up smaller as you get stronger because there's a lot of untapped potential in the beginning. And knowing that the curve is going to do that can help change your expectations. Often when things don't go well, when we hit some sort of plateau in improvement, when we hit a hard part, when we hit a sticking point, we think something's going wrong. I'm not doing the right things. I need to double down, which can lead to going too extreme and burning out. We start overthinking. There's maybe anxiety. We beat ourselves up. We question if it's the right path for us to begin with. But if we realize that it's normal take all of that mental chatter, put it to the side. You only have the difficulty of the task at hand, what's happening in reality, versus your thoughts about what's happening, just something separate. So that's step one, knowing that it happens. It also can increase patience so that, okay, let me keep going, working on it to get to that next level. It is important to question your strategy if ever you hit a plateau for a very long time. Do you need a coach? Do you need some additional knowledge? Do you need a new technique to get to that next level? But often, just time and patience. Let's take an example with an imaginary man named Frank. Every time that Frank wants to pursue his dream of becoming, let's say, something like a cartoonist or an animator or a game designer, something that's a bit creative but that someone might also feasibly want to do professionally. Every time he gets into it, let's say he takes a class, he maybe meets up with someone to build his network in that field, he reads a book on it, he starts dabbling and creating some of his own projects to maybe create a portfolio. But every time, whether it's 6 months in or a year in, he gets a little bit disenchanted. He gets frustrated with something. And then he changes gears. He might say, oh, you know what? I really need to focus on work right now. I don't have time for this stuff outside of work. Or he might say, I need to focus on something for my friends or my family. Or he might just find something else that he finds more interesting, a different creative project. But then another year or two goes by and he remembers this dream he had. So he goes back to his design work. And this cycle might repeat itself over the course of a decade. And he might not even realize that every time he pivots, he's doing it out of frustration about how things are going and how difficult mastery can be, or frustration about the business side of this endeavor. Often we don't even realize we're in these cycles. So it might be helpful to journal about some of the pivots you've taken, maybe even draw. Is there some sort of cycle or spiral that you've been in? Or have you been pivoting to constantly different things every couple years? There's nothing wrong with pivoting or changing our mind, but it is helpful to see if we're stuck in any sort of cycle. There's another parallel example I have for this when you're doing work and you get to a point that you're not sure about the next step. It's almost like, you're solving a math equation and it's going well. And then, when you're solving a math equation, like we all do from time to time. But remember when you do math and you get to a point that you're stuck and it's just like you kind of just don't know how to go forward from there. Let's say you're writing a paper or an email and you don't know how to phrase something, or you just get to an annoying part of your work. Often that's when we'll check our phone for texts, we'll check our email, we'll check social media, we'll check the news. Similar to that cycle that I mentioned right before, most of the time we don't realize that we're doing this. We just think, oh, I'm going to take a break right now. Or, oh, I've been working a while. Let me just check this. Let me see if I got any notifications. We don't realize that we're frustrated and we're stuck and we're at this sort of sticking point. So we're doing that. And it's a shame because when we do that, we're usually right before kind of a breakthrough. And that's not to say that you need to try to force it if you're not sure of the next step. Often, if you were to just go for a walk around the block, or maybe make yourself a little snack, use the bathroom, drink some water, do a stretch or something, just take some time, but don't try and fill that frustration with dopamine boosts of notifications and distractions and kind of numbing out. Often the answer will come to you because you just stayed present, even if you did take a break with some downtime. So knowing why we're doing what we're doing, seeing ourselves doing it, all of this can be helpful too. So it's interesting in the book Mastery by George Leonard, it also has 3 types of people: the obsessive, the hacker, and the dabbler, and why each of them won't persist and master something, why they quit, how they kind of fizzle out. And I actually saw myself in every personality type, different aspects of myself. I don't think that we're necessarily one, and he says that as well. The obsessive wants results really quickly, so they work extremely hard. They get the extra books on it. They stay late after class. They're trying to get to that next step, especially when it's frustrating. I found the hacker was kind of 2 different people, depending on which part he described it. But anyway, he did use tennis quite a bit as an example. And the hacker would just be like, oh, you know what? My forehand's good and I have a sloppy backhand and it's fine. I'm just going to go out and play and I'm almost good enough to play with my friends. So whatever, I can play and I can get by. And the dabbler is someone that loves the beginning, loves like just starting, getting all the equipment, starting something out, telling everyone, showing off a bit. They're like, oh, look at the skill I'm building. And especially in that beginning when it's just starting to go well. And then when it gets hard, it's like, oh, no, this isn't right for me. For XYZ reasons, let me pivot. He did say quite a bit more about each one of them, but I definitely saw aspects of myself in all of them. And I think that we all can be all of these different people, especially when, and he did get at this, that when we're extremely goal-oriented, it can often be the problem. And it's counterintuitive because wanting to be good at something, isn't that kind of a good thing? To have an objective, to strongly desire it, to really want to have a certain result. A lot of that's what it is to be human, with like target, go after it, achieve it, next thing. That's a lot of what makes us up, but it's that really wanting that target that can completely mess us up in the actual process of attaining it, especially when it's something that's going to take time and when you're going to have to take a path that has dips and valleys to get there, which then begs the question, how badly do you want it? And knowing that this happens can be helpful because we know that no matter which path we take, we're going to run into this. The dabbler who's going to change and change and change, he's going to keep running into this over and over, and he'll never really work on the path to mastery, which again is fine. But for people that want to master something, it's helpful to zoom out and see this process, this cycle happening so that you can circumvent it, so that eventually you can just say, you know what? XYZ thing, career, skill, we're about to get into relationships soon. This relationship, it's for me. I accept the downsides. I accept the positive. I accept the hills and valleys and mountains and everything that comes with it. Now let's talk about relationships. Something that's relevant here that I think is an interesting fact, don't know where I learned it. Most couples have about 3 unsolvable conflicts for the duration of their relationship. Meaning some fights might come and go. Let's say that you disagree about something about raising the kids, but it's something that you're able to work through. You find a solution, you move on. But let's say when it comes to finances, you all have different views about money and how money should be handled. And one of you very frugal, one of you really just believes in spending a little bit more freely, and that's how you enjoy certain things like travel. That's just something that neither of you is changing on, but you find a way to work through it, or you just annoy the crap out of each other forever. But it's something that is a fight or a disagreement, let's say that you're going to have for maybe the duration of your relationship. And then 2 more. Now, knowing this is helpful because if someone's in their first relationship or they don't know this, they might say, oh, well, we keep having this problem. We keep having this disagreement. That means that something might be wrong. We should break up. But if you know that every single relationship that you're ever going to be in, there's going to be around 3 things that will always be a problem, then it's just about choosing what are the problems you can tolerate, who's the person that you just most want to be with, you really enjoy them, and can you work through things constructively? Can you, when those arguments come up, how constructively do you work through them? That way we don't expect perfection or everything to just keep improving indefinitely, regardless of the area of life. Let's go back to that little graph, that mastery graph. Notice how small the jumps are. I almost had to turn the book the other way because I was like, is it going up? But when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to tell. With my clients that I coach for strength training, I will constantly have to remind them, when we first started, you could not even do a proper modified push-up. And now you are doing regular, full push-ups. And they'll say, really? I don't remember that. Sometimes I almost just wish I could film them on their first day. I guess I could with their permission and just be like, here's your starting point so that you realize down the line how much stronger you've gotten. Tracking progress can be helpful for this reason. Having people that tell you that you've improved, friends, coaches, etc. And just being in it for the sake of improvement. If it was filmmaking, let's go with that example, because you love cinema, you love movies, you love story, you love characters. With tennis, you love moving your body, you like being outside, you like being with the other people on the court. The actual act of just mastering something, of improving it in kind of a meta way, you enjoy learning. You enjoy how it feels to be mastering something. And this changes us in a way. We're different people when we're able to be patient and actually stick through something. It's very Zen. There's something meditative and Zen-like about that. To kind of get away of the cliche of the journey is the destination kind of thing and just saying that, I'm instead going to pull up a couple quotes for you. So this is from the Trojan Horse Affair podcast, and one of the characters said this. I wrote it down when I listened to this years ago because I just found it so beautiful. The goal is not the end. My goal is just the struggle. And if you have that vision, then you are never completely defeated. You have to be patient. My goal is just the struggle. His goal is that freaking plateau. It's that hard part, that like persistence in it. That's the goal, not how good it feels when you make that little jump to the next level. There's something that kind of gives, at least me, chills about that. I don't know about you if it gives you kind of feels like just when you sink in. Another quote. This is by Cal Newport in Slow Productivity. It's basically about how the path is the reward. Here's the quote. Little value was to be gained in rushing. The work itself provided the reward. Now, that doesn't sound as meaningful because I ripped it out of a really juicy passage that I'm not going to read the whole thing of. I definitely recommend Cal's book, Slow Productivity, kind of builds on a lot of his past work. The idea that what you do in your whole life over decades, the work that you're doing matters a lot more than what you do on any given day. And our culture that is really geared towards rushing and results and productivity and constant output distracts us from that meaningful work over a lifetime. And he talks about, Newton and Galileo, Jane Austen, and more modern examples such as Lin-Manuel Miranda, and how these people were not rushing to create something. They took their time, but the work was more impactful because of that. So that's kind of connected to this. A lot of our impatience with the sticking point is due to rushing, and it never bears the fruit. Speaking of fruit, I guess I'll end on this. You can't rush a tree growing or bearing fruit. It happens in the time that it happens. It takes as long as it takes to grow. But we kind of hold ourselves to different standards than nature. But we're part of nature. We're alive. Okay. Let's end there. Okay. Love you. Thank you for being here. If this is helpful for you, share it with a friend. That's all I ask. And see you next week.